So everyone talks about how this new employee, younger employees, they are not motivated. They don't know how to work hard. They're not committed. Well, I think they're wrong, and so does my guest, Jonathan Traver, who is the owner of Traver Connect and many other training solutions. He's been in the training business for many, many years, and what he's going to talk about is what he's seen over time that you should be applying and what these new generation of employees need from you. So welcome to You're in Charge Now What? I'm your host, Glenn Pasch, and this is the podcast to help new leaders become better trained, more motivated, more organized so they can lead their team to the results that they want. So let's dive into today's episode with Jonathan Traver and help you figure out how to train these new employees. All right, John, thank you so much for being here. Really excited about this conversation because, you are truly one of the pioneers of training, especially in the automotive space, but, your expertise branches out into other industries as well. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is, first, you are considered one of the pioneers of BDC, or a business development center, where individuals are focused solely on generating, conversations, connecting with people who are looking to buy a product. In case of automotive, they want to purchase a vehicle or they want to service their car. And I want to understand from you is how you saw the need, because obviously we had salespeople who were not doing that skill, or what you saw was we have two distinct groups of people who are, as they say, the hunters. They're the ones who want to really close the deal. And then you have the farmers who are nurturing, trying to have that conversation. And it's hard to find both of those skills in one person. So talk to me about that light bulb moment, why you decided to go down that route, and maybe even some of the initial pushback that you were crazy for even embracing something that is so commonplace today.
Glenn, thanks for having us. That question, I wish I had been asked that question the way you asked it 100 times before. That could be our whole show right there, because I think, okay, so I'm going to answer the question. First of all, the question was its origin. Where does it come from? You kind of teed up a little bit about BDC. Yes, that was original work. But I want to go a little bit before that to tee it up, because I think why directs us to what. What I saw in the 80s, I was selling in a dealership, paying my way through college. I really didn't see myself in automotive retail. I remember the first year, it was a Dodge store. My general manager knew that I was learned. And so I'm on the showroom floor, but there were parts and service workshops that Chrysler had for the Dodge store that they had to check the box and send somebody to. And you knew who they would send. I was basically, you remember the Life cereal commercials with Mikey?
Sure.
I was Mikey. They'd say, send Traver, he'll go. So Glenn, what happened in that first year is I indirectly got a macro view of the business. Like I quickly saw like, hey, this is a retention and referral business. If you don't get repeat, you're going to make a living off of the showroom floor. The second thing I saw was turnover. I saw guys come and go and come and go. And I listened to sales managers and how they assessed it. And I just saw this huge disconnect.
Right.
The third thing I saw was the consumer. So this is late 80s. This is 86, 87, 88. But Glenn, the consumer was onto the whole sales process, if I can put that in a quote, right? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Pasch. We've misplaced your keys. But anyways, I'm still trying to get you a little bit more for your trade. It was like made your skin curl. And I'm thinking, okay, we're making a living off of the hardest to close, lowest grossing, more educated source of business. And they wonder why guys are blowing in and out of here. Right? Like you're not going to make a living doing that. So that's where the BDC came from for me. Tom Stuker was already doing phone room training at the time. You might remember that.
Sure.
So when I fast forward to, I was director of operations and training for Russ Darrow. So in that role, I basically was over training operations, not a COO role. None of it was purely find and grow our people. And I think the second thing that happened for me early was the easiest way to grow any business is to grow the people.
Right.
That's it. And that's why we're here today, right? We're talking about training and development. Well, training is just a means to an end. The end is the learning. And I think to be good at training, we have to be focused on our audience. I mean, the easiest rule I would give somebody that's listening and watching this, I would say adopt this rule. He or she who is most flexible will win. He or she who is most flexible will win. In other words, there are many ways. And if you're focused on your audience and their reception of what's being taught, you have a shot. You have a
Right.
shot at growing people. So some people, we understand the VAC, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Some people learn through illustration. Some learn by doing. Some, I have one of my three kids, all my kids are adults. They're all married, having kids. It's a wonderful stage of life. But one of them has this unfair advantage where he is so auditory that if you said it back in the, annals of time, he'll recite it for you. You
Right.
know, no notes. The rest of us all kind of grovel because he has that advantage. I don't learn like that, Glenn.
Right.
I learn by seeing and doing. Now, if you tell me your name 3 times, I may call you Bill. But if I write it down or I see it, I'll know you 10, 20 years later, like
Right.
that. So learning your audience, being flexible, that takes us into the mediums of training. So BDC, the idea behind BDC was a couple things. Number one, it was to reduce turnover, to improve professionalism in the sales process. But it was the means was going to be showroom appointment business. So it was focused on the salesperson. It was not focused on the business development coordinator that you saw it evolve to over time. Why? Because I looked at that staff, and I think my role in operations of training for Russ Darrow was we already got these people on payroll. What are we doing? Why are we adding more payroll? And I also was around at a time where it was almost like we were bifurcating and trifurcating the role of the salesperson. It was
Hmm.
like, well, you can't do deliveries well, Glenn. So we're going to have a delivery coordinator. Do you remember
Right.
that? We could
Sure.
get our CSI score. So it was implying that I was unable to do it right. Oh, okay. So now I'm going to have somebody make calls for me. Okay, okay, what do I do here? And by the way, are you solving your turnover problem? I don't think so. So I just felt like that was the answer. So the BDC that was the work. That's the name I gave it. It was a little more. My thought was we needed to also have a way to grow managers. So I felt like if we could teach people how to communicate with keywords and phrases. So I wasn't really a script guy.
Right.
I was keywords and phrases. I felt like communication is a contact sport. Bert Decker wrote a book many years ago called Communications Contact Sport. I love the book. He basically used Bill Walsh versus John Madden as
Hmm.
former football guys as announcers and asked the question, who's a better communicator?
Right.
Right? Easy answer, right? No offense to either. Both are late guys that both have passed, but John Madden is an icon. He's got video games named after him,
Hmm.
right? Because of boom and pow and this guy like that. So to me, I think it really came down to look, we need a process for creating daily showroom traffic. It evolved into what basic simple numbers. We had a management awareness conference early on where we would bring dealers in to give them sort of the macro view of what was working and how to manage this thing. And of course, they're like this, they don't
Yes,
want
of
to be
course.
there, one day. And honestly, this was a Hail Mary for me. This was very early on. It was a grind. I had a couple trainers and they're coming back with their tail between their legs after going into stores. And I'm like, man, we're having a hard time getting the people in the training room. And the sales managers are like, take them upstairs. So there's disengagement. And I'm literally talking to myself. I'm like, Traver, you better figure something out here. And this is like 93. Now, Toyota had already called me. So we were in like 8 or 10 of the top 25 Toyota stores through as a result of some 20 groups that I had done. And Glenn, I didn't have a clue. I really didn't. It wasn't like, I'm calling the plays. This was pure grace. how it was unfolding truly.
Right.
Um, I literally, I mean, I look at the timing and certain things happen, like even the idea, the time was right. I always say, you know, timing is a big part of success. The iPhone in 1980 wouldn't be a good idea. You know, there's a few things missing. So timing is part of it too. But to, you know, what we did is we did this Mac and I opened the Mac. I knew I was on, I was like, hey, dude, you got like 3 minutes to
To
hammer
get
this
them
thing home.
right.
Yep. And I opened, and I said, listen, Vic Vaughn, who owns a store today and a handful of stores in the hill country of Texas here, incredible general manager, but wound like an 8-day clock. I mean, it's like, you know, his fingers are rolling on the desk. Okay, what do we got? You know, like that.
Right.
And I said, look, there's 100 things we can talk about in today's event. But I said, if I only had 5 minutes with you, this is what I would tell you. If you don't know how many confirmed appointments are coming today on your showroom floor, then you should be sitting here so I can show you a simple roadmap to know. There's three ratios. There's a 1-to-1, a 2-to-1, and a 3-to-1. 1-to-1 means if you have 10 people on your showroom floor, you have 10 confirmed appointments. That's 1-to-1. If you have 20 appointments and you have 10 people, that's a 2-to-1. And so well, I knew 90 seconds in that, you know, it was like the heads were moving. And I said, now let's talk about where those appointments come from. Your phones are ringing. You spend 60, 80 grand a month to get the phone to ring. You don't spend 2 cents to make sure we talk intelligently. Have you listened? Now, some of you do. Let me ask you another question. Do you track? I know you track how many calls you get. Do you track how many you sell? Because it doesn't matter how many you get if you don't track them through how many are sold.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so
Right?
you begin so if I'm hearing you correctly, what you were trying to do is give them a framework to be able to measure, not micromanage activity, but how can we be more productive in a day? Because as you said, the idea wasn't to chop up the role and have five people do one person's role, where today it seems like we've gotten used to that, because and we've, in my mind, made excuses that we can't find someone. But you do see stores now trying to do the single point of contact all the way through. But it sounds like what you were trying to do is reverse engineer to say, what's the result we want? How can we measure what they should be doing, train them on how to do it, and then hold them accountable to do it? Because, as you said, if they're already on the payroll, what are they doing with their day to generate an outcome, in this case, an appointment, for us to at least be able to do what we do? Is that a fair way to
It
put that?
is. It is. If you and I were on the floor, our goal every day is have 3 scheduled appointments. We know 2 will show, 1 will roll. We're selling a car every day, and we're probably selling it to somebody that likes us, trusts us.
Hmm.
The CSI process is better. That was the end game. I want to grow you while we do it. I want to teach you how to handle certain objections. You're going to be able to practice on the phone where you have keywords and phrases, guides in front of you, so that when we're face to face, those same things become resonant with you. So there was a method. There was a business development center was trademarked early when I did it. I trademarked it, but business development system was my first work. It was an entire system. It was an
Right.
ecology
And
of
you were
what
focused
you
more
just said.
on the person training, personal development. And I think that's,
Yes.
it's easy. And I always hear it is, we always throw the word training, but we never keep the word development for too long around. It's always training, training. And the training is the class, the training is the manual, the training is the process, it's the development. And so, do you see over your time that you've been involved with training, what you just laid out was almost, it's that dream, that vision of, oh, I am going to coach you and I am going to develop you and I am going to teach you how to talk and invest all this time. But honestly, still, I don't see a lot of that today. I see a lot of, well, they should know better. Here it is, go in there and watch a video. Here's this, because maybe the person above them hadn't really helped them organize their day enough to prove to them that they had time to train you. I'm not sure we've trained the trainers enough to utilize that system that you're talking about to develop our people, because I still see turnover. I still see siloed, you know, parts of the process. BDC's over here, sales is over there, service BDC's over here. We're not unified in our process. So again, this development of, what you're talking about is still happening today. So let's take a little bit of a jump a few years. Is what are you seeing now? Is today's employee any different than the employee previously, meaning they need this training, they need this development?
Trying to pick a spot to land on that question. Yeah, obviously things have evolved, right? So there are differences. The very first thing I would say on this subject, if the audience is watching this and they're saying, how does this apply to me? I would start with consider who you're training. Make sure that person fits the mission. Make sure you know the mission. The assumption here as we get into this question is I have the right people in the room. Well, that's not always true. Look, I'm all for Kevin Smith at Dynatron said to me recently in a conversation, he's like, we arrived at a place where we realized everybody's an A player at something. They
Right.
may or may not fit the role we got them in, but that, in other words, it doesn't make them not important. It
Right,
just
right,
might
right.
fit in that role. Okay, good. So make sure your audience fits the role. Okay, that's 50% of the work right there.
Well, so
So
so so let's focus on that. Let's get a little
okay,
tactical here because there's going to be people who say, "Well, I don't know till I put them through the training if they really can do it." But you should still have some sort of framework of the traits, let's say,
mm,
that they need for this role versus, the old day, if they fog a mirror, we'll throw them again. We'll throw them in
mhm,
and see what fits. And to your point is that wastes a lot of people's time, frustration of and that could be a reason why I don't want to train people because whoever's vetting the people are sending me people that don't have the skill set. So to your point is even before you have the mission, really decide what are the traits that we need, be it experience. We have some, as you said, it's evolved. We have personality tests now if you want to do them, or some sort of testing procedure to say, are you even able to come into the room to try out, right? That
mm,
type of
mm.
concept, and then being able to push them through. But so do you see that as something that is a trait that is often skipped?
Yes, absolutely. Peter Drucker wrote a book called Five Essential Questions. It's 20 years old now and it's timeless. Question one, what is our mission? Question two, who is our customer? Question three, what is our customer value? Question four, how are we doing? Question five, what is our plan? Your mission, like at Traver Connect, at XPS Solutions, another company I have. These are company with 3 digits worth of associates, and our mission in each business is identical. These are essentially organizations that are business process outsourcing. We're either handling payments and tenant support at XPS, or in service, we're chasing retention in fixed for automotive,
Mhm.
scheduling, inbound, outbound. We have tools, we have training. Okay, but our mission isn't those things. Our mission is experience matters. Okay, unpack that. There's 3 words: theirs, yours, ours. Theirs is the consumer. The reason we do this is because experience matters. Now, I'm not preaching. I just want to lay this point down. You'll
No,
see
no,
my
no, no.
point.
This is what I want, tactical.
Okay, so all right. So if experience matters, what does it mean? Okay, here's how I would start the training. Glenn, if this is one-on-one and you're just joining Traver, I'd say, listen, the first thing I want you to see, I'm going to show you a short video clip here in a sec, but the people you talk to, they don't want to make this call. They see you just had right there, like I saw
Mhm.
the synapse
Sure.
physically in you. You're like, ah, they don't want to make this call. Like this is there's the last thing on their list, 50 piles of dung, and then this task.
Right.
Okay. I get to call the dealership today, said nobody, right? I have to call the dealership. I got to get my car in for service. There are these not very good vibes. Okay. That's the role we're in. So there's a lot of friction in this experience. We can take that friction out by how we interact, by what our screens do for you to enable that customer to have a positive visit. We're going to show you 3 of those things are going to happen in every call that make this journey for this customer way better than the average store. See, now you have a why. Okay. I haven't even told you what yet. I just
Mhm.
told you why. Where most mistakes are happening is first base. That's first base. You got to have a mission. Go back and what a mission is never what in business, it's why. In the military, it's what, but in business, it's why. Brother, I've made this mistake. I've made this mistake over and over and over to where like I'm literally tuning myself up, going, hey, dude, seriously, get back to why. And when we have discussions internally in these businesses here, I mean, a lot of times I'll start and say, why are we here? We're because experience matters. So at XPS, it's X, there's no E on it. It's experience matters because it
Right.
plays. At Traver, it's experience matters. Theirs, yours, ours. So theirs is the consumer. Our job is to take the friction out of their journey. Yours is the client. So to us, this is another Druckerism, but scheduling appointments, for example, that's mailroom work. Very few of those people doing that work for the dealer are going to be promoted into executive level management. So then this role is really a job of being efficient. And so if that's the case, Drucker would always say, sell the mailroom. Find somebody who focuses on that and does that better than you for
Right.
less. And we
Exactly.
do. That's our job. Is I'm not saying we're perfect. We screw up every day, but we can do it for a third to half. And so that's the idea, is how do we do that seamlessly where it virtually is the store doing it? So that's the theirs part. And ours is what your show is about today. Look, those are wonderful aspirations, theirs and yours. Who's going to do that? Ours. The key is if the mission is clear, then you get the right people in the room. Now that look, you can be average at educating, developing, and training if you have the right people. You can be great at those three things, but if you don't have the right people, I got news for you. You're going to be there a long time.
Right. No,
You're
and I
talking.
see. So what I love about that, and for those of you listening, the reason why I wanted to focus on, one of the top, we keep talking about today's employee. I think every employee has always needed this. And I think we've failed previously because we were always trained, or we always said, well, no one ever did this for me. I'm going to mimic the boss that I worked under, and they just told me what to do, and I had to figure it out myself. But because today, potential employees, have a lot of different options. And I know it's frustrating for managers, and especially managers with experience. There is a frustration of, why do I have to tell everyone this way? But what I try to talk to clients of mine or people that I coach and mentor is, if you do what you just said, if you map out the why, if you find the right people, if you lay out the how, and you help people want to do a good job. People don't want to come in and try to figure it out every day. And what's John? Which John is
Bingo.
showing up today? So if you have that consistency, and I think today's employees need that, because that's the way school is. It's very organized. But if you front load that training, it makes your life so much easier later on. I've always said, just listen to yourself. And if you say to someone, how many times have I told you this versus how many times did I show you this? If you really showed somebody and trained somebody the right way, it's easier to get them back on track. But I think that's the problem. And I agree with you, John, is that there's a rush to get to the result without the proper setup.
Yeah, it's like roulette in Vegas. I mean, let's see what happens with the people in the room. If the mission is clear, by the way, you'll hear often if we had a room full of people in our industry, somebody's going to bring this point up. They're going to say, well, today it's hard to find good people. They're this
Right,
general.
right,
Oh,
right, right.
okay. All right. So if you unpack that, what they're going to tell you is um, they're going to describe basically this lack of commitment is where it ends up.
Mhm.
And what I found, and I bet anybody that really truly looks and they're listening, not to respond, but listening to really hear what's happening, this is what they're going to see. Most of the young workforce today, they're looking for a mission, like more than ever. So you asked what changed. Okay, brother, I'm giving you one right there. That to me has changed. Like I have a gal here Rebecca Jones in recruiting, who does recruiting for us, and sharp, but I knew right away mission was really important to her.
Mhm.
Like she could have taken a bunch of roles. When it comes to training, Joe Clementi, who just joined our organization, and Joe is an incredible talent. If you know Joe, he's known as Coach Joe. Um, he reminded me of something this week. He said, John, he said, when you go to Chick-fil-A and they say our pleasure, he goes, do you know how long it took them to actually make that a standard? I said, how long? He said, guess. I said, 5 years. He said, 7. I said, for 7 years, they had to, he said, yeah. And he said, now somebody comes in the organization and they're lined up and they say it right away. So I give you 2 examples quickly of people that are lined up with mission, where the why is there. So now everything else we get to talk about today becomes easier because that first peg is in place. If you're talking to the wrong audience, not only are you going to lack a mission and fulfillment, but you're doing somebody else a disservice. We're all terminal. We have a certain amount of time here. The idea is get you to where you're bent and strong as quick as you can. Some of us are journeying through stages to develop that skill set, but still, to me, that is the kindest thing we can do in
So
this endeavor
so
here.
so so two things, and I agree with you. I heard a speaker at one time, and he was a younger individual, and he was representing, speaking for the Gen whatever it was, X or Z at that time. And he said that always offends me when people say the young people are unenthusiastic and don't want to work hard. He goes, look at me. And he said, he goes, that's the problem, is that everybody thinks, vertically, that this generation and that generation. He says, versus thinking horizontally. He goes, take any generation and there's high achievers, mid achievers, and low achievers. And he said, I'll bet any of you in the audience, whatever age you are, a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old, a 60-year-old. He goes, I bet you know people your own age that you would consider lazy, unmotivated, without a mission. So he said, don't tell me the whole generation is. He goes, because I don't, he goes, I don't want to be seen as lazy. I want that opportunity. So off of that, as you were talking, what struck me is, okay, I'm going to throw a scenario at you. Someone who's listening to this goes, I believe, I love what you're saying, John. I'm running a team. Maybe he thinks he has a mission. Maybe he thinks we don't have a mission. Give me 2 or 3 things this person could do to get his team aligned, because maybe they have a mission, but they haven't talked about it. Or if he feels, well, I'm not sure we have a mission because maybe the people above him aren't the ones talking about a mission. So how do I get my team to have a vision, a mission, so that we can do what you just said?
Yeah, questions are going to be your roadmap there. So you're going to ask, why do we do what we do? What problem are we solving? Why is that problem important? Right? There's 300 plus million vehicles on the street today in the United States. There's 17,000 retail dealers. One of the fastest growing parts of automotive service after you buy a vehicle is independence, chains. There's more of them than there are of us. The problem is getting your vehicle serviced, especially one that's been built in the last 5 or 10 years. At some point, you're going to have to hook up to the machines that are at the dealership. Some of those codes won't be read at Meineke, if you will, right? And so you basically begin to unpack and say, well, so why do they defect? Only a third come back to the store. So the experience isn't that great. How do we fix that? And if we did, what would the world look like? How do we impact people? Why is it a problem? So you talk about it, you ask, and you'll arrive at a point where you have a breakthrough, and it's probably more obvious than people give it, credence for. But start there, get your mission clear first. Then I would say, once you have that in place, then you need a path, Glenn. And so that path it could be a career path. You go to a Buc-ee's. Have you ever been to a Buc-ee's?
Sure.
Okay, great. For those that haven't, we need to tell them what it is. It's just like, let's call it a supermarket gas station, right? Would you
It's
agree?
if it it's It's the size of like a Costco with gas, but you have to throw in a restaurant in the middle of it that's cooking brisket and world-class brisket and things like that. You know, that's about the closest that I could equate.
But par excellence. Great job. So it's this ridiculous footprint. It was okay. So what was their mission? You ready for this? They built it on clean bathrooms. Glenn, you're road tripping with the family and we
Sure.
gotta hit a gas station and it's like, oh my gosh, are we gonna get sick using these restrooms?
Right, right,
That's where their idea started. And they kept, so it was this theme of we can do better because
right.
that standard is too low. And so they just kept, to your point, I mean, you can buy housewares, if you're into rural stuff, you can buy feeders
Mhm.
for hunting. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, you end up spending some time there, and there's buses that chart their route to hit a Bucky's, and they've grown outside of Texas today. They're in multiple states. That being said, how did they get there? Dirty bathrooms and the aspiration of providing a better experience. So, what are you doing at your business? And why is that important? Why does that matter? How do you communicate that in the elevator pitch that's brief, where people can't miss it? Um, Once you have that, then you go career path. Then you start with your training content, and your training content has to hit visual, auditory, kinesthetic. So it cannot just be video. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit. You mentioned that earlier, but it should have video. And so I'm not here to tell you whether video works or doesn't, because I could put people on the show and say, yeah, it really helped me. I could put people on the show and say, well, I need more than video. So again, back to what I said earlier, if you're focused on your audience and you're flexible and you're committed to seeing them learn, how do I know you learn? Well, that means I'm going to test you.
Right.
I'm going to elicit your learning, right? I know that repetition is the mother of skill. So just because you memorized it doesn't mean you're skilled at it. Doesn't mean you understand it. So so this is a developmental process, which your instinct already spoke to that on the show. You've talked about developing people. The assumption there is that they're willing to learn. So, like at this stage of my career, I do have some people that reach out and say, "Hey, would you consider being one of my mentors?" What I love about that question is they don't put me on the spot as if I'm the only person, number one. And I would recommend that to anybody that's looking to continue to learn. By the way, those that are in training, the assumption is they want to learn. And that's why I'm bringing this up real quick. Um, but two is the mentee, the assumption is they're teachable. So you need both. And so good instructors, Glenn, I think when you're doing training and education, you have a way of communicating this that stimulates the desire to be teachable. So it could be stories, it could be examples, but what you're doing is you're edifying teachability as a very strong and positive trait
Right.
that you don't ever have to arrive at having every answer. That's okay. Probably never going to hit that milestone. But the journey of being teachable and inquisitive, and then give examples of that. Like one I'll use, there was a stage in my life where I was coaching a lot of baseball with my kids. And if I'm teaching cover three defense at third base with 9-year-olds, I would rotate everybody, not just the skilled kid.
Right.
Everybody play third. It's 9. This is the time. It's getting everybody involved. Boys, girls, doesn't matter. And so, Glenn, there were two different types of players. There's the player that basically felt like they were under the hot lights. And so they would quickly, scrunch their body and do this. And they wouldn't look at anybody and roll off the field, do the drill. And then there's the kid that right here, coach, like right here, I knew I could trust that kid.
Right.
I knew I could trust, and I love teaching that because that kid did one thing different than other kids. He asked questions.
Right.
And so to me, part of seeing teachability in people is making it, first of all, opening communication where they can ask you questions. And what you want to do is sort of grease the skids a little bit and tell them, guys, I want you to ask me. Y'all, I want you guys to ask me as we go through this. I want you to look at this. There was a guy named Alan May who worked for Microsoft 1980. And Xerox had the first patent on Windows operating systems. And then, of course, Steve Jobs was hired to do the contract with Xerox. And then, of course, we know what happened at Apple. So the fast follow at Microsoft was Alan May. Alan May had a famous quote. I've run this quote a million times. I'm going to share it with you here. He said, perspective is worth 80 points on the IQ. And the first time I heard that, I thought, well, that wouldn't have been a very smart person, if their average IQ after having the right perspective, because that means if average is 100, you'd have a 20, and that wouldn't be a great place to live. But if the average IQ, if you're adding 80 points, he exaggerated. But what he was talking about was Windows and graphical user interface and how you can make computing very mindful, and you now are macro and you understand what you're doing in this task. It was a brilliant way of saying perspective changes everything. It gives you an advantage.
Sure.
Well, how do you get perspective? I got to ask questions, and I need an educator that elicits good questions and guides me through learning.
I think that's important. And I think one of the, just listening to this, so going from video, let's say, I think video has been an amazing addition for training, but it also, in some cases, for a poor educator, is a babysitter, or is, well, it goes back to they'll figure it out. It almost reverts back to what we, looked back on training and said it was a lot of, here, read this, go follow John around and you figure it out. And then you wonder why you got frustrated. Here, watch the video, check the box, versus that's a beginning phase of here's it written, here's it by video. Now we're going to go implement. And I think that's in my opinion, one of the biggest things for today's employee. Like you said, they want a mission, but they want someone to show them what they're supposed to do, not baby them. Just show me what you need to do, because they're really smart. And that's the way they've been trained. And they're used to being on video. Games and learning and just scrolling through and taking information in. I think it is incumbent of us as leaders from the top down to make sure that we are helping our team implement the vision in their day-to-day, implement whatever they need to physically do, the actions that are going to deliver on that mission. If we don't, then shame on us, right? If we're frustrated with our team, look in the mirror first and say, well, did I do my job? So I think that, to me, listening to this, and it's been really tactical as well of breaking that down. I think that's probably some of the things I took away, is that idea of going back and saying, what is your mission? And I think to your point, for today's employee, they want a mission. And I think it's also that idea of they have so much information thrown at them at their fingertips today. They need someone to help them figure out what is important for them. How can I help them accomplish, point them in the right direction? Because I think this young generation is so much more savvy than we are, wiser, but I think they've also been bombarded and they need that mission. And I think it's incumbent upon us as leaders running businesses all the way down, following down that ladder to whatever team you're running. What is our mission? How, why is it important? How are we going to execute? Here are the steps. Here's how I'm going to train you. Here's how I'm going to coach you. And that idea of coaching. And I think through it all, listening to you, it just feels like you've always been a coach. You move through the world as a coach. And I think that's, hearing that's what we need more of, versus someone barking orders, but putting in that time, like you did with the 9-year-olds, to coach them to success. You can't tell a 9-year-old, go over there and do this, and then not get mad at them. Like, it's your own problem. So I really, really like that. So I want to wind this up with, one more business, then we have a couple off the cuff questions I want to ask you. So for you, looking forward now, forward vision a little bit, a lot of great experience coming through here where you are for the next 5 years, for your companies, for your mission, what you feel you're going to help companies to achieve in the next, call it 5 years. what's the thing that you're focusing on with your companies that you think this is the value that I add to a company's ability to accomplish their mission?
There's a there's probably two things. One is why we do what we do, right, in business. So whatever that particular business is, I think our focus is on there's purpose behind what we do. What and that I've hammered home, I think, today as we
Sure.
talked about it. The second is ownership. When you read Colin's book, Good to Great, and that book was written in the first decade of the 2000s, I think it was '07. That book also is still timeless. And if you remember, he interviewed 1,435 companies and he asked them only two questions: double digit year over year revenue growth for 10 straight years, yes or no. So he had like almost 2,000 companies total, including the privately held,
Sure.
and only a couple hundred that said yes. So that list went from that to this, Glenn. And they asked the second question: double digit year over year NOI growth. So 10% a year or more for 10 straight years without missing a year. And now he had a group of 20. He reached out to the 20. He said, can we talk? Half of the group, Heisman,
Yep.
no, don't want you to know my secrets. The other half were servant leaders, my friend. And they were like, you guys want to talk to us? Sure, come
Sure.
on
Why
in.
not?
They didn't even know. And so they studied the 10 or 11. And what did they find? The very first thing they found that they all had in common is they had associates who thought and acted like owners. So you ask me, and if you talk to our leaders, they'll tell you. I say often, if if I'm no longer on this earth, you guys are in a position. I'm constantly building this in a way where I'm building your capacity. I'm reminding of you what you're capable of. I'm reminding you of what you're growing into. You have this. So I don't want to be the guy. I want to build a team that realizes, and by the way, your time will come too, where you'll duplicate yourself.
Sure.
To me, that is, you know why that's important to me? Because it lasts longer than me. That's why.
That's a great answer. I think that is the role of any leader, is to duplicate yourself. I think that is the mission of it. All right. This is fun. I could sit here. We could go on and on and on. This is great. It's
I
been a,
wish we would have connected years ago. I've seen your work and you've done incredible work, both of you guys. This has been a privilege
great. Thank you.
to run
Thank
with
you.
you.
All right. So at the end, I ask three questions from everybody.
Uh-oh.
So the first one, you've talked a lot. You've mentioned a lot of books and things like that. But what are you currently reading, watching, listening to that's inspiring you?
Yeah. My next book is Rocket Fuel, which is a takeoff from Traction, which is Gino Wickman's book. This is Gino and Mark Winters. So that's my next book. And it's literally about getting traction in business. You know, I'm an avid reader, but that is next in the docket. So looking forward to that. And as far as what was the other part of it
No, I was
besides
just
what?
asking you, it's one or the other, like which
Yeah,
one you're doing it.
reading.
Okay. Next one is what are you working on for yourself personally right now, for yourself only, that
Yeah.
a year from now you're going to look back and you're going to say, I'm glad I did that?
Yeah. Basically, it is myself, and currently there's a strong emphasis on what I'm eating. Glenn, I have went back to the basics, and it's when I eat and what I eat, and I've really enjoyed the journey. So protein, fiber, uh, you know, it's not like uber protein diet. It's not the Miami Beach or whatever it
Or
was
the
called.
carnivore diet and, you know.
No, 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 no. But yeah, that has really, really helped me. Um, so that's what I'm working on, that and just again continuing to invest in myself that I can parlay it back to those that are around me.
All right. Last one, I always like this. Is there a skill or a hobby that you have that that someone would be surprised that you do or you're good at?
Well, I don't know how good I am compared to professionals that do it, but this one may surprise some people. I have a third company. It's a ranch operation, and I can run pretty much any piece of equipment, and I enjoy it. I mean, I can run it with pretty much any of the guys that are on the team.
Look at that. Now, I would not guess that from that nice jacket that you have on, that you got the things going on and you're all, you know, I'm out here farming.
This afternoon, when I'm done with this, in about 2 hours, there's an excavator being dropped off, and I'll be running that later.
Oh, he's like, I got a new toy. So
It's just a rental, but yeah, running heavy equipment, that might surprise some people.
there you go. Well, listen, John, thank you so much. Could you just take a moment, if there's anything that's going on you want to share with the audience, also let them know where they can find you, connect with you. This is someone I think, audience, you definitely should connect with and follow. So where can they find you? And we'll link it up all in the show notes too.
Love it. Yeah, LinkedIn, right? John Traver. So Traver Companies, and just look us up. And if we can help you in any way, we'd be happy to. And again, thank you for thinking of us today. Thank you for the opportunity to share with your audience.
Oh, I appreciate it. I really do. It was a great conversation. All right, so audience, you know the drill. The end of every episode, I ask you to share this out if you found value. There's definitely someone in your network that could benefit from what the conversation John and I had today. Remember, if you do appreciate what we do here, please make sure you like, share. As I said, every week we're here with new topics. We're back in the studio. We have a couple great episodes coming up on this topic, so I do appreciate that. I know that there's tons of places for you to watch content, and the fact that you spent some time with John and me today means the world to me. And as I say at the end of every episode, you're in charge. But now John gave you a few more tools in your tool belt to help you become the leader that you want to be. Thanks so much. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. And John, I look forward to seeing you as well.
You too. Thank you.